Nietzsche is as irreligious as one could imagine. Though it's not always clear as to how much of his rhetoric is to be taken literally as objective truth. That's a question, because what he thinks about objective truth. You see, he doesn't think there is any such thing. It's also not clear whether his rhetoric is really what he himself thinks. Because according to one line of scholarship, Nietzsche's work was edited after his death by his sister, who was a proto-Nazi. Get the picture? And there are some things in Nietzsche which people have interpreted as being really in the sort of voluntarist tradition that in this country represented by William James. Much more benign. And in France represented by Henri Bergson. You remember Bergson, whom you read about in the Whitehead chapter, with his distinction between analysis and intuition, a sort of creative outburst in the evolutionary process all the time. Well, I think the point is that, that Nietzsche, whichever way you take him there, is very much influenced by the Romanticist movement. Late Romantic. Very much the critic of 19th century culture and of Enlightenment. And that's the way in which Stumpf presents him in his chapter, so be sure to read Stumpf in this. Nietzsche represents, if you like, the repudiation of evolutionary idealism with all of its 19th century optimism. The world ain't getting better and better all the time. There's nothing benign driving the process. Rather, and here is the sort of adjustments, sort of assertions he makes, rather, God is dead. Now, he uses that phrase. I think Hegel may have been the first to use it. I'm told it appears in Matthew Arnold. Dostoevsky, of course, says if God is dead, then anything is possible. But Nietzsche, yes, talks of the death of God. This is not just a philosophical fact for him. It's a cultural phenomenon. That is to say, God language is a dead language. Doesn't have any meaning to people. Belief in God is irrelevant. And for Nietzsche, the thing which has made it irrelevant is that Christianity, as he reads it, says to nature, the physical world, our physical bodies and their lives and our emotions, has said no to nature. And Jesus and Paul represent a sort of weak-willed breed which can't accept the physical nature of their lives. Paul's always blaming it on the flesh, you see. On the other hand, ancient paganism, Greek paganism, said yes to nature. Strong-willed, willing to seize life as it is in all of its physical virility. Incidentally, this is the background against which Karl Barth, the Protestant theologian, said that in Christ incarnate, God says a giant yes to nature. Get it? In becoming incarnate in the physical creation, in the human creation. God says yes to that creation. Yes to nature. But for Nietzsche, God is dead. He's critical, you see, of, let's call it 19th century Victorianized religion. That kept all of the seediness and the physicality of our existence, especially sexuality, under wraps. And, you know, if you want the vision of under wraps, think of the way Queen Victoria dressed. In black from head to toe. Nietzsche doesn't say that, I said that. Yeah, when I was a kid, my grandmothers, who were widows, all dressed in black from head to toe. That was the cultural pattern, you see. It's sort of interesting today to see the difference. Contrast. Well, God is dead. Now, he also is critical of the Darwinian theory of natural selection. Because that sort of evolution thinks of life as a gradual adjustment to the environment, and consequently would promise to make nothing but well-adjusted doodlers. You see, well-adjusted doodlers. Doodling, because they don't have the creative vitality and the force of will not to adjust, but to overcome whatever the opposition is to their lives. Rather, what he sees is that there is no hope in the uncreative, well-adjusted conformist fitting into his given station in life and its duties. And incidentally, F.H. Bradley, the Hegelian idealist, has an essay on ethics which gets to the heart of his ethical theory. The essay is called My Station and Its Duties. He's not talking of a railroad station. He's talking of his station in life, his class in the social stress, adjusting to environment that Nietzsche repudiates. He turns rather to what he calls the aesthetic point of view. And notice how different this is than the aesthetic stage as pictured by Kierkegaard. The aesthetic point of view, remember, is romanticized. It's the point of view of creative individuality. Creative individuality. And he tries to adapt romanticism to his own point of view in a work called The Birth of Tragedy. The Birth of Tragedy, where, going back to the Greeks, he talks of two traditions in opposition to each other, the Dionysian and the Apollonian. Now, those terms obviously symbolize things that you're familiar with. The Dionysian, vitality. The Apollonian, form. the Apollonian rational order, the Dionysian, the vitality of riotous creative outbursts of emotion, passion. Now, in that dialectic, you see, in the tension between those two, the Greeks created tragedies. You see? Tragedies in which life is creatively affirmed in the face of all that's horrible. As if there is an order, a logos structure of some sort, even amidst all that vitality brings for better and especially for worse. So the conception of tragedy, then, has to do with the overcoming of the horrible. Now, in this, you can catch a couple of echoes. Do you remember Schopenhauer? Do you remember Schopenhauer's major work, The World as Will and Idea? Will, vitality. Idea, the rational mental representation. You see? Now, Schopenhauer, of course, was arguing that the idea is purely phenomenal. It's the will that is real. He was a voluntaristic idealist. Now, Nietzsche likewise. Reason is a matter of appearance, outward form. The underlying reality, creative will. And it's that creative will which he calls the will to power, the will to overcome, the will to power, which is the creative spirit of a master race. And you notice in these selections, there is one called master morality, servant morality. What does that remind you of? Hegel, master-servant relationship. All right, what Nietzsche gives you is a dialectic between master morality and servant morality. You see? Because there are two different moralities. He's an ethical relativist in the sense that the morality is the morality of, be it the strong-willed or the weak-willed. So what is morally right, morally good, is not what is good for the maximum number of people, but what benefits the strong-willed and furthers their creative power. Well, you can see then that underlying these sorts of reactions against Enlightenment, Nietzsche is first of all a voluntarist. The ultimate nature of things is more of the nature of will than of intellect. And you'll find